younger generation, right? They're able to go do stuff and get things done, but I don't think they necessarily know why. But I began to see my peers not as competition to beat, but as worthy rivals in the sense that Simon Sinek described in The Infinite Game later. Because once I shifted from competing against fellow officers to learning from them and actively helping them succeed as well, everything changed.
Sometimes it's just communicating, but it is really an easy thing to miss.
You have to be intentional to reach out and build a relationship.
One of the major factors in trust is time.
Because I think some people look at it as if that person works themselves out of a job, they're out of a job, I can get rid of them. And I'm like, if I can find somebody who can continuously work themselves out of a job because they systematize, they automate, or they can delegate it to people who cost me less, that's the keeper. That's the people you want to keep around.
As I hire people, as I work with people, I'm finding that the younger group has almost become addicted to apps. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? Welcome to PlanAssist Podcast, where we help people make better financial decisions by interviewing interesting and different people of all kind of walks of life and kind of where their background is. And we always started off with the same question. If you could give your younger self advice, what would it be? So before I get into that, I want to introduce Jason Walker, our guest today. Jason works with growing businesses that have outgrown their informal processes and are feeling the strain of scale. His focus is simple but hard to execute. Build systems that bring clarity, accountability, and consistent execution so leaders can stop firefighting and start leading. Jason's background spans military leadership, engineering, and more than 2 decades of helping organizations align people, processes, and technology. He is known to help owners move from kind of chaos to control without losing control of culture and burning out teams, which is obviously a major part of growing businesses and continuing to hold on to your people. So I'm really excited to have you. Welcome today, Jason.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Thanks for coming on. So do you want to add anything to that or anything I missed?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. And I'm sure as we talk and discuss, there'll be other points that come up, but you covered the essence very well. So thank you.
Perfect. All right, good. All right. So as we talked before you got on the call, I always start all these calls off with everybody kind of the same question of, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
All right. I was thinking through that. It was a good exercise to do. And I think there's probably about 10 to 500 that I could come up with, as we look back on our life.
Everybody,
I'll narrow it down to just one or two here. I think one of the big ones was some called the idea of learn the idea of a worthy rival much earlier than I did. Maybe as early as high school, to kind of stop trying to one up my peers and actually start learning from them.
That's good.
Years later, it's really clicked for me during my time in the Marine Corps, especially after starting my service at Marine Barracks 8th and I. It was my second duty station. Great organization, great opportunity there. But I began to see my peers not as competition to beat, but as worthy rivals in the sense that Simon Sinek described in The Infinite Game later. I hadn't heard that term until he brought it out in The Infinite Game. But because once I shifted from competing against fellow officers to learning from them and actively helping them succeed as well, everything changed. And I still kept a healthy competitive spirit, but it was no longer about ego or comparison. It became about collective excellence. And so that it really redefined the team, what the team really is. Because up to that point, I was really focused on like building elite teams, but among those who reported directly to me, right? And the principles are still the same, and because that part still matters. But the real breakthrough was realizing that my peer group, right, the officers that report to the same leader, was actually the most important team to get right. Because if that peer team was aligned, trusted each other, and held a high standard, everyone won. The organization got better, the mission got better, and each individual team got better. So that mindset shift made me a better leader and frankly a better teammate. And that's really when I start working on building elite teams. That's really what I'm talking about on that, because it's real easy to get people who directly report to you, or it's easier, I should say, to get them to kind of cooperate and operate, because they can fake it because they don't want to anger the boss. But if you can get your peer group operating that way, where you trust each other, They'll hold each other account, actually know how to hold each other accountable, actually be willing to hold each other accountable, and when they're willing to sacrifice for each other. I mean, what can't that team do?
So how
Yeah.
old were you when that happened? What was
I
the age, kind of that
I was
transition?
20, I was 28 when I
Okay.
made that shift.
Okay.
And I vividly remember, I mean, I vividly remember just a year prior or 2 years prior with other officers. I was in 3rd Light Armor Reconnaissance Battalion and quality guys. But I remember having the mindset of trying to outdo them, and instead of how do I make myself better? How do I make my team better and make their team better as well? How do I cooperate with them? And it's not that I got in their way or tried to get in their way. I was more focused on how do I look like I'm doing better here, you know?
So just to add to the conversation, so myself, I had a really similar coaching exercise with my boss when I was at Schwab. I was a branch manager in Indianapolis, and we had a region of 13, 14 other branches. And it was so interesting because I did a review with him. And at that time, I was really focused on managing down my team in my branch. And I
Right.
was really focused on managing clients, right? Those were my two primary focuses. I
Yeah.
could care less about the branches in the region, my other peers
Right.
across the region. And I had a call with my boss, and he told me, he goes, no one likes you in the region. I started laughing. I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, your branch is running good and da 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 da. He goes, but your peers, you're not getting along very good with them. And I was young at the time. I mean, I was kind of mid 30s. So it's interesting because what I did, now I didn't have a coach like you to help me with it, but what I did was I just back then, and I'm still this way, kind of real super type A, is I said, okay, then I'm going to call one of those members a day. Every day, I'm going to call somebody in the group, right? So once a month, I'd pretty much touch everybody, right? Because I think
Yeah.
there was 14 or 15. So I started calling them, and within 1 year, I literally got the People's Choice Award from that exact group of people. So my point is sometimes it's just communicating, but it is really an easy thing to miss.
Yeah, very much so. Because you have to be intentional to reach out and build a relationship.
Correct.
And it all comes from trust, right? And so
And
I
those
really,
relationships don't look like they add much value. So it is kind of it does add value, but it doesn't feel like it adds value when you're building the business because the people you're reporting to and the clients seem more important at the time, but
right.
it is important to your point.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I remember, and it was an officer at, now he wasn't a peer. Was he a peer? No, he outranked me, but I do remember being able to go to him, and he was a stud as Marine officers go and everything, but challenging him on a decision he was making about some of the Marines that I was responsible for. And I kept going back to try to get a change of transportation or something for him. They were actually Camp David Marines that were with us on an operation, and trying to get them back to Camp David sooner than having to go back to home base with us and then move around. Anyway, so I approached him several times. He kept denying me, but my younger self would have been real frustrated, mad, and everything. But I maintained the respect of like, okay, he's got that decision and he's listening to me at least and give me an opportunity to speak. But it plays out in
Yeah.
that way of that trust factor.
Yeah,
Do I trust that individual even though I don't agree with them? Right.
exactly.
And that's it's something that definitely in the society we have right now is not common.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, and it's definitely not a given. Trust is a huge, huge
it's huge.
factor in relationships. So,
Yeah. So, and
but,
that,
but,
that that's really foundational for a lot of
it,
what I do.
and it's really just, it's not just it. One of the major factors in trust is time,
Yep.
and almost no one really wants to spend very much. That was my point with my peers when I was talking to my boss. I'm like, seriously, I don't want to spend time doing it, but it
Right.
was important. So, what's the other thing? What's the other? If you had another question, then we'll kind of get into the conversation.
Yeah. So I would say don't confuse loving an organization with loving your job.
Oh,
And
that's a good
so
one too.
this is tied to my time in the Marine Corps. I was an infantry officer, so my background is lead a little bit of my background, but so my career started in the military. I enlisted in the Navy, went through I didn't want to go to college because I hated English, and I wanted to get into something technical and be able to start using it right away. So
Uh-huh.
thinking a year or 2 year of training and then I can go do something, right? Ended up being 6 years before I actually went and did anything. But anyway, that's a different part of it. So I went through the nuclear power program as an electrician, which is probably one of the hardest programs in the Navy. And then I got picked up for the Naval Academy and I got an aerospace engineering degree there. So, And then I went into the Marine Corps. I was commissioned Marine Corps infantry officer. So I got this very strong technical, analytical mind,
Very unusual, right?
right?
You're
And
almost
then
like I mean, that's a really unusual
it,
profile.
it's been a rare path. There's not a lot of people I know that have gone that path. And so, but I got very analytical mind, very non-technical world to execute in. And I wouldn't trade it. I love that aspect of it. The leadership, the team building, being able to take a hill, kind of organize around that. But when I got to the point after 6 years in the Marine Corps, I was looking to transition out. I look back now and I'm like, I love the Marine Corps. I was just needed something more mentally challenging. And if I
Uh-huh.
would have like transitioned into data systems or something like that in the Marine Corps,
You would have
I would
retired.
have loved it. And they
Yeah.
would have loved it too, because the infantry is the core of the core.
Yeah.
And it is really, and so having that knowledge and then going into a supporting, environment would have been awesome and still kept me mentally challenged and everything. So
How much time did you spend in the armed services
I
total?
love
Kind of
I didn't know this,
six,
11
seven
and a
years.
half years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So a long time.
So
And does going to the Naval Academy count as part of your
it didn't
tenure?
count. It might have counted after I hit 20, but it didn't count getting toward 20.
I see.
And so when I talk to people in the military that are looking to get out, and I actually shared this with my cousin who was 10 years behind me. He stayed in because of the advice. I'm going to ask him for half his retirement when he gets out. But
Exactly.
um, I tell him, said, listen, if you don't hate the military, maybe you just don't like your job. That's understandable. Look and see if it's a big organization. Look and see if there's other opportunities within there to serve and do something challenging for you.
Right.
That's kind of the advice I give people when they reach out to me, or I see that they're looking to get out or whatever. They've not made that final decision yet. Give
But
them
but
that
that
advice.
applies in corporate America too. I mean, I
Yeah,
mean,
it
I mean
does.
that applies in, if you're a Martin Marietta or you're I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, when I was at Charles Schwab and Company or I was at Ameriprise or H&R Block, there was always stuff kind of around that I could do if I chose to do so without
Yeah.
leaving.
Yeah, in larger organizations, it's possible. And if you're in a 20 man or 50 person
Much more
organization, not as
difficult.
much opportunity, but definitely 1,000 or more, you've got some options probably.
So that's perfect. Nice setup. And that's a good setup kind of background of what you do and kind of that process. So let's shift to as you're working with these small businesses, because the majority of the people that listen to this podcast kind of come from, they're not necessarily the owners, but they can be, but they come from that kind of small to mid-sized business. So, and they're typically in the leadership roles of these companies because that's the group that has money, right? So I'm a financial
Right.
advisor, so I can't
Yep.
help people without money. So,
Right.
so in reality, I mean, that's just kind of the natural flow of kind of who engages with me. What do you see kind of their biggest challenges, I guess, in 2026? And I know that's a broad, general conversation, but still we can kind of start there and maybe drill in.
Yeah. Well, I'll obviously focus on if I've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So,
Uh-huh.
uh,
Yeah.
so the areas that I'm involved in that I really see the challenges are, I see a lot of teams everywhere I see this, right? A lot of teams have the tools and systems that in their organization, they're just either misused, underutilized, or disconnected. And so over time, that leads to friction, conflict, rework, and leadership fatigue. And so, with the rate at which platforms and systems are evolving and coming to market at this point, right? There's an app for everything, and people have all these tools and resources at their disposal. They just don't know how to use it. And I kind of I know there's more than this, but the groups I really kind of interact with are the executive minded and then the technical minded, right? And neither one of them talk each other's language. And so the executive mindset, right? They understand the business side. They understand what they want to happen and what they want to see as an end result, but may not be able to describe how to technically get there and how to use the platforms to get there. And then the technical side, they understand the platforms and how they operate and how they function, but they don't understand the business side of things. And so getting those two to work well together so that you can accomplish the vision of the executive, right? Because they drive things. Technology should help support and ease and eliminate barriers and
Yeah, but
make
the
things
two,
more simple.
yeah, the two definitely have to work together and be on the
Yeah.
same page. So what's your opinion of these apps? And it's kind of a setup question. So I'll kind of finish the thought on it. So I'm mid 60s. I'm very technical. I mean, because I grew up with Windows and you know what I mean. I mean, so and MS DOS and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
I'm very
We've seen it
technical.
evolve.
Exactly. And when I say technical, I'm not very technical compared to someone in the technical business. I'm very
Right.
technical compared to someone of my peers is the best way to word it, right? So it's
Yeah.
like everything. Once you get outside your little peer group, you find out you're not very technical or you're not very good at anything. But in my group, I'm pretty technical. And one of the challenges as I hire people, as I work with people, is I'm finding that the younger group has almost become addicted to apps. And they're not very technical. They'll say I'm technical. Oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really, really technical. But they're actually not because
Right.
they can't really describe the functionality of it. They're almost like they just run their lives off of their little apps.
Yep.
And I guess that's okay as long as they don't kind of think they're technical, right? I mean, it's back to that kind of self-awareness. If you kind of know you don't know, that's good, but if you don't know and think you do, that's not good.
Right. Yeah, I think when you talk about the younger group, right? You're technical. I'm very technical in what I do and understanding that I understand the different platforms. I understand systems
Uh-huh.
and what we do, right? And I think it comes from one, there's a lot of experience, right? Engineering and different stuff. I was using data tools and everything, spreadsheets and everything to do
CAD,
the
all that
engineering,
stuff.
right?
Yeah,
So I had to
exactly.
learn the tools, even though that wasn't my trade. I had to learn the tools to do what I was learning to do, right?
And they
Um,
weren't and they weren't apps. They were
and they weren't
literally
apps,
software applications. You had to
right?
learn how they
Well,
worked.
they were applications, but they
No,
weren't surface applications,
yeah,
right?
they weren't. When I
They weren't
use the word
shallow.
app, I'm saying the app on your phone. I mean,
Yeah,
they were
that
applications, but they were software basically. Well, we would have called software.
yeah, we would call them software programs
Exactly.
and the apps, which the apps today, most of them are interfaces, right?
Yeah.
It's just an interface to see the data in a certain way. And so what I think the younger generation has missed out on, and that we got to see the evolution, right? Unlike our parents, who the evolution was very slow, right? To move from, pen and paper to a computer, and then the thing we were actually involved in all of that, right? Because
Yeah,
we were
exactly.
taught cursive. I even was taught typewriter,
Right.
right?
I
And
mean, we
but
knew MS DOS. I
that's
mean, I
right.
mean, and I wasn't even a
We
technical
were there
person.
when the computer came out, right?
Exactly. So
And
we knew
so
the slash, whatever, I
that's
mean,
right.
India, all we knew all that stuff. That's right.
And the modem sound,
That's
right?
right.
Which brings
Exactly.
back memories like that,
Yeah.
right? So we got to see all the evolution, and with that, we got the context of what it was solving, right? Of what the applications and software were solving, because you and I probably did budgets with a green ledger,
Yeah. No,
right?
right.
Green ledger paper, right? Did accounting and everything on that. Well, what the spreadsheet was solving that, right?
Yes.
And the file directory was solving a file cabinet that you'd have to make three copies of something and put it in three different folders so that no matter which folder you went to, you could go to it and file directory, right? So the problems that were being solved, we experienced those problems and we understood how the application software program solved that problem,
Good
right?
point.
All the
That's
way
a really
through. And
good point.
we still understand it
Right.
because we understand the back end of it of why it's doing what it's doing. And the younger generation, they don't have that context. So I think we've got as a general, right? There's still people who our age that don't get this, but the critical thinking that we look at on that of saying what did it solve? Well, if it can solve that, what else can it solve? Right? What else can it do? Goes to how we become very, I think in your term, right, is technical in that you know how to take a tool and apply it in different contexts. And I think a lot of the younger generation, they know how to use the app they're using, but they don't necessarily know how to apply it in a different environment.
To that point, what I worry about for them, and I don't want to sound like, oh, I had to walk uphill in the snow
Right.
barefooted. I'm not trying to say that, and I'm not trying to kind of downplay that younger generation, but I am trying to say, if you're running a business or you're trying to make money, when you're working with that group, what I find is the difference is much, much broader than when I grew up. So I'll give an example. When I grew up, I graduated from our high school class of 130 kids, right? 10 years later, you know, there was a few that were doing okay, right? I mean, but one, two, 10 years later. And, one, two were probably in prison, right? I mean, the different, but the vast majority of us, the 100 of us kind of in the middle, we all look the same. Whether we went to college, whether we didn't go to college, whether we went to work in a factory, whatever we did, went to the military, it didn't matter. We kind of all looked the same. We were driving the same cars. We drove, we lived in the same neighborhoods. We looked very, very similar, that middle group. What's happening today that kids have to grasp and have to really dig in and think about this, that is not the world that we live in today. What happens now is you take that 130 kids and 20 or 30 of them, not one or two, 20 or 30 of them will just excel beyond belief, right? I
Right.
mean, like that's how you have these 30-year-old millionaires, these 35,
Yeah.
they're just insane. I mean, like go through the roof. And so that means if you're in that middle group, you need to be aware that as you get older, you're going to have a hard time making a living if you're not able to add value and serious value to a small business, to a large
Right.
business, whatever that is. And part of that value is what I would call technical skills and technical knowledge. And that
Yeah.
is really what I worry about with even the kids I know. Like, I'm like, you're pretty good, but you're not really good. I mean,
Yeah.
and you kind of got to be really good if you're 35 years old, right? I mean, like if you're going to survive this AI, which we're going to talk about that here in a second,
Yeah.
if you're surviving the next 15 or 20 years, you better be in that top 20 or you're going to have a really hard time making a living.
Well, and I think where I was, and I'm glad you said it because I'm not knocking the younger generation because
Right.
I think
No, exactly.
they're brilliant minds there. I think it's the can they apply, right? And it really does come down to the critical thinking skills that I think we had opportunity. We were forced to use our critical thinking skills,
Correct.
right?
It
We
wasn't,
didn't
it
have an
wasn't because we
option.
were, and it wasn't because we were good or because we worked hard or anything. We were just forced to
We were forced
because
to, right?
in
Because of the
order to survive.
conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we had to do the math. We had
That's
to
right.
figure out why the formulas worked, and getting into data spreadsheets, why how did it have to be connected, right?
That's right.
And I think and particularly with AI, right, you don't have to understand that anymore. You can ask AI to explain it to you, and it'll explain it to you real well, but there's not always a need to understand why something works now. You just need to get it done. And so I think that with younger generation, right, they're able to go do stuff and get things done, but I don't think they necessarily know why it works sometimes,
And the
or
why's
why
the
or how it
part.
applies.
And again, I'm a financial advisor, so I mean, people listen to me. It's we're doing it for finance. So the why is what you get paid for. That's how you make money. If you don't
Mm,
really understand the why, it's not that you can't make a good living for a year, 2 years,
right.
5 years,
Yep.
but if you don't really go deep on the why, you're going to wake up one day and think, well, what the heck? How can't I replace that job or how can't I da da da
Yep.
da? And the reason is because as they kind of matured or went through. So let's shift this conversation to AI. Let's talk about AI. Where are you at on AI? Give me kind of a 3-minute summary of kind of what you
So I
see and where
I
you're at
spend
on
every
it.
day in AI.
Okay.
I've got ChatGPT is my about three or four of my employees. So
Uh-huh.
I'm a team of one right now, but I use AI for marketing. I use AI for programming. I use AI for communications and kind of really maximizing that element of it of taking my content or my seed and over time I've trained it to know my voice so that it can expedite communications for me and it advises me many times too because like I'll ask what are the risks involved in communicating or in dealing with this proposal or whatever, and it says here's the things you need to consider based on the notes that I gave it, and I'm like I didn't think of that. That's really good.
Yeah.
And so make sure we include that in the communication that we counter that. So I am using it at that basis it's on a personal productivity level, very much at this point. Within like organizationally, I've got some automations going on it, as far as doing that, but I've not really fully integrated AI into like my organization, because I've got a real, I'm a real small organization. So,
Now,
but
what
with,
about the organizations you work with?
yeah, with the organizations I work with, where I'm seeing it implemented at places, but on a small, medium size that I'm working on yet, I've not seen it really implemented extremely well. They're still trying to figure it out, but they're looking for ways to do it.
I
I
agree.
know there's opportunities to do it. It's figuring out how to make it happen. Now at the enterprise level, I think they've got, they're making huge leaps and bounds there. And I'm real concerned with how our economy is set up right now and how our government setup is, where we helping small, medium-sized businesses make that leap is challenging. And we
Yeah.
got some big corporations that are there and they're just going to skyrocket, and it's going to be a hindrance to new businesses coming in, right? Which is a real big part of our time. So we won't go down a political path there, but I am concerned with that aspect of it, because I think to make AI work well at the organizational level, you need a lot of smart minds in there to make it work, to design it and architect it, right? And so they really got to understand how it works. On a personal level, right? Personal productivity level, everybody can use it and really maximize it. But I'm operating more at that realm. I'm excited for what it can do at the high level, like all the robotics and the, like Amazon warehouses and everything, of how that AI is kind of thinking through all of that and anticipating orders, making orders, all that stuff, right? They're doing that at that level. I've not seen that kind of happen at the mid-sized level yet, but I'm not necessarily involved with a lot of companies that are trying it either. So,
So I see almost the identical thing you're seeing. So again, a lot of my clients are kind of that mid group, and what I find is there's kind of three groups that I kind of bump into. So obviously you and I know for each other from church, so Christians, and I do have a lot of friends that are pretty hard right wing Christians. Okay, so right wing may be the wrong word, but hard kind of right, and that group is just like, I'm not using it.
mm,
Okay. I mean, it's bad, right? So then you have another group of people who are using it for spell checking, right? So they're kind of messing around with it. They'll use it for, you can always tell, because they'll send you an email and it's, 20 pages long, but you can
yep,
tell it's written by them. And then there's another group that is trying to kind of adopt it, right? But that's really what I see in that small to mid-sized company. Um, and I wish I was 10 years younger, because as scary as it looks, I'm not kidding. I am as excited as I've been since when the internet rolled out. So I was part of that group,
yep,
and the argument that these small businesses are having about AI are literally, Jason, the identical argument that we had about internet. I mean,
right.
like I could change the internet's going to do this. Okay, that you can't do this. What about security? What about all that stuff? I said, whatever. I said, just change that argument in 1999 and put AI in there, and you're having the exact same
That
debate.
same one, yeah.
And I think it's, I just think people need to kind of figure out how to embrace it. And I think it's going to be just insanely fun. I mean, like, I'm where you are. So I really am adopting it
Yeah.
huge. I'm actually rolling out a tool. Um, It'll only be for clients, but it's like, I'm at the point where I think I'm rolling out a tool that collaborates with the advisor and the client, right?
Mm,
Because what's happening to me is my clients are using it, or it's not all my clients, but probably 25% of them are
right.
using it. And then I use it, but we'll have conversations that are separate. And I'm like, you know what? I got to figure out some way to have conversations together where I'm in the
Yeah.
same room. And so I'm putting a program or tool together that can kind of put us in the same chat room, where they
Oh,
can
that's
ask a
cool.
question and I'll see the question and I'll see the answer. And then I can ask a question and they can see my question in chat.
Right.
But it's a collaborative tool to engage them versus,
I think that's brilliant, because like you can't read their mind. You've got a wealth of experience, and sometimes they're asking really interesting questions, but the AI may not get all the context right for it. And with your expertise and experience, you can come in and ask a better question, or reframe it a little bit, or give more context to it to get a better answer for them.
exactly. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's going to make
I,
those of us that are experts in a particular field just more experts. I
right.
really
Yeah.
believe that. I'm not at all worried about it taking my
Yeah. I'm not
job.
either,
I,
because I know, to me right now, AI serves like a just a huge library that comes forward and not you have to go find it,
That's
right?
exactly
Like
what it is, though. That's a good
it
that's a good
takes all
visual.
the knowledge
Yeah.
and brings it together. Now, it does. There are some elements of it where it's like it makes stuff up, you know. So this is where the experts I think come in handy and go, that doesn't look right. Clarify where you got that source and where you came up with that, and it'll say, I made that up.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
No.
don't make stuff up. You know,
Yes.
tell us what you are. So having that, I think what you're doing is going to be very valuable and really help your clients out a lot on that
Yeah.
because AI's got definitely more knowledge than you, right? I
Right.
mean, it
No,
can
no, no
tap into
question about
so
it.
much,
And it can
but
organize stuff so
and then
much
it can
faster
organize
and
it and
quicker
so
than I
much. But
can.
what it doesn't have is the experiential application of that knowledge.
What I worry about is, and and I'd love your opinion on this, especially someone who coaches small businesses. So you've heard of C12, right? Okay.
Yep, yep. Great
So
organization.
so I'm surprised no one has come up with a organization that is kind of like C12 without all the noise, but it's around AI, right? Because here's what's happening, and I can tell you from personal experience what's happening. What's happening is AI is actually separating us and we're losing the relationships. And that's what I'm trying to do with this tool. I'm like, okay,
Right.
I don't want you asking AI about a 529 or should I lease a car, buy a car, or where should I go something. I'm not going to tell you the answer necessarily, but I want to be part of the conversation as your financial advisor. That's really what I'm trying to say, right?
Right.
So then how do I do that in a way that engages my clients to where they're not in a bubble and asking AI question? I'm in a bubble asking AI question. How do we collaborate and create a build relationships with AI? And that's what I mean by C12. Like I'm surprised no one has come up with a small business AI think tank where 12 or 5 or 6 people get together on a regular basis and just talk around how they're doing AI with no real. You don't need a presentation. You just
Right.
need to facilitate a conversation.
Have you asked AI if they've done that?
I've a- I haven't asked AI if it's done it, but of course it says it's a good idea because there's 3 things on AI. For those of you listening to this, I'm sure most people are probably somewhat AI, and this won't be a surprise to you. There's 3 major limitations of AI for those of you listening to this AI. Number one is it'll hallucinate. That's what you talked about, give you the wrong answer. Okay. I mean, it will hallucinate and give you the wrong answer, right?
Right.
Number two, it'll do what's called sycophanting. That means that if you ask it enough follow-up questions, it will 100% of the time agree with you. You can get it to always agree with you. In
Right.
fact, there's YouTubes where someone who's a devout Muslim can get it to say that Muslim's the only religion, and then someone who's a devout Christian can get it to say Christian's the only religion
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's sycophanting, right? And then lastly, it'll just build in your personal bias over time if it's saving information, right?
Right.
So if you understand kind of those pieces, and anyways, that's my kind of quick thing on AI.
Yeah.
But I do find it. I want to figure out how we make it more relationship driven versus kind of
Or
off by
help
ourselves.
facilitate relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
better way to word it.
So yeah, and I think what you're doing, you're right. I think most people are looking at how does it replace people,
Exactly.
right? How
That
does it
is,
replace my labor force
yes.
instead of how does it bring our labor force closer together?
And how does it get me closer to clients? And I'm
Right.
talking to anyone. I'm a financial
Yep.
advisor, so it doesn't matter that they happen to be financial services clients. They could be insurance clients. They could be, manufacturing. It doesn't matter. How do you
Right.
engage? How do you use it to build stronger bonds and relationships with clients? And
Yeah.
that's the piece no one's kind of figured out.
Yeah.
Again, you have those people that are out there on the edges doing it really good by themselves, and then you have people not using it. But that
Right. And it's interesting because I think some of the mindset there in businesses and you see it in education, which I understand why this is there, right? Of I don't want you using AI because in education, I'm actually wanting people to learn critical thinking skills and everything, but learning to use the tool is also part of the education, right?
no
So,
question.
but in the business world, some of it is, you know, I'm paying you for your time. If you can do it in 5 minutes through that, then why don't I just use AI myself and replace you, right? But I think there does come after having used it for a couple years, right? There is an art and a skill to use an AI and creating the elements that you want out of it to the best degree, right? Because it still takes the eye because of those three problems with AI that you mentioned, right? Someone's got to notice when it's doing that.
Correct.
And they've got to be
And
able to
people
say,
like you and I, because we use it so much, we notice it immediately,
right, yeah,
right? But a normal person, but I wouldn't notice it. I take that back. I notice it immediately if I'm asking it a financial question.
hmm.
I would
In
not
your area of
notice it.
expertise.
Exactly. I would
Right.
not notice it if I was asking it a medical question,
Correct.
right?
Yep, that's
I mean,
true.
so you get outside my skill set.
Yeah.
I just know it happens, so I'm going to be a little more cautious, but I wouldn't notice if it was doing it or not.
Right. Now that's a very good distinction. So that's where the expertise is still going to play a role moving forward.
Right.
And how do you build that room? I think your concept of the C12 group, right, where you got experts from the different industries and now using AI to answer that question. Maybe, like if a manufacturer is in there and he's like, okay, I'm going to ask this question, and the whole group's looking at it, and then they ask something financial or insurance or something like that, then the insurance guy can go, hey, that's giving you a wrong answer on this element. Everything else is good. This is bad. Here's what,
Yeah.
here's what we got to clarify with it and different stuff like that as a group, as far as that dialogue of learning together and pursuing together and stuff like that. So,
And getting to know each other, right? I
and
mean,
getting
back
to
to
know each
back
other.
to
Yep.
relationship, because it's almost like whatever AI says, who cares? Because it'll always be there. But how do you connect to the local business people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, how do you make it so that
That'd be
so
interesting. Tell me when you start that up. We'll
no, I'll show it to you. No, no, I don't know that. That's probably more. I'd probably join one. I'm not going to start one because I'm just doing kind of what I'm doing with my tool, my PlanAssist tool, where I'm going to engage AI with my clients. I'll see how that goes, but I'm still a
yeah.
couple months from that too. So,
Yeah.
what
Yeah, but
else do you have
that
going?
is a really good question though and I'm going to write that down because I think with as I'm working with my clients, how do you think we could use AI to make the relationships better? Or how are you using AI to make the relationships better instead of just replacing labor? Because building elite teams, if someone can work themselves out of a job, they are valuable to me
Right,
because I can put them on a new mission,
somewhere else. Yeah.
new part of the role. Whereas I think some people look at it as if that person works themselves out of a job, they're out of a job, I can get rid of them. And I'm like, if I can find somebody who can continuously work themselves out of a job because they systematize, they automate, they find better ways, easier ways to do it, or they can delegate it to people who cost me less. That's the keeper.
I,
That's the people you want to keep around.
I'm back to. I still think that they're going at this AI thing backwards, in my opinion. And again, I'm nobody, so just in my thing. But I think that most of the small business, the big businesses, are not missing this. Right, to your point, AI. If you look at Amazon, Coca-Cola, if you look at the big businesses, they're not missing this. But the small to mid-sized businesses are missing this in spades, and that is they're looking at AI as a way to make their businesses more productive, which is fine and good and should,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
again, I don't have any problem with doing that, but that's really just table stakes for being a small business person, right? You always got to be looking for new technology, new ways to be more productive, new ways to cut costs. That's you just don't stay in business if that's not your mindset, right? So that's not a new thought process for the typical small business person. What is a new concept is they better get used to their clients using AI. And then they better figure out a way to be part of their clients using AI,
Right.
right? And that's the piece that I think is much more difficult and much more mind like advisors. I was talking to someone where one of the big firms were trying to roll out a similar program that I'm trying to do. And they tested it and they said the problem with it is now, again, I have a really small team, or a really small group of clients. I only have 50 clients. So I know all my clients. Okay. So there's no question they're going to ask AI that's really going to send me sideways. They can ask, what's the average cost for hiring a financial advisor? I don't care what they ask it. I can have a really deep conversation about whatever AI says. Right.
Right.
But if you're a typical big financial services firm or a big insurance firm, well, you have a bunch of people you've trained just to sell. They don't have technical knowledge. They don't have really, so they can get really tripped up
Right.
really fast if a client is leveraging AI.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, but I'm using my financial services as an example. That's true in every business, right?
Right.
I mean, what's it
Yeah.
matter what business you're in? Line business, the insurance business.
So I'd hope that part of it, right, is using AI to educate your sales force, educate your team,
Yeah,
right? And building, trying to get the knowledge shaped so that it represents the company well and becomes, part of the training program
yeah.
of that. I think is a great application of it. I use AI to educate myself all the time on different topics and everything. If something new pops up, I'm like, hey, in this context, explain what's going on here, and it gives me a quick rundown, and it makes sense, and because part of my background, like as an aerospace engineer, this isn't rocket science. I've done rocket science. This is not rocket science.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff we do is not rocket science, but I'm ignorant of a lot of stuff. And so AI I'm not stupid. I'm ignorant, not stupid,
Right.
right? And so
Very big
AI is
difference.
really good at eliminating ignorance
But
if
but
if if it's not lying to you.
so we'll finish. I'll sum this up and kind of do, but I want to finish this AI conversation. One thing that,
Yeah.
that I see is a because you work with small business all the time, and I'm just curious, and I like this conversation, but I have a strong opinion about some of the stuff is my aha was when I had that AI workshop. Okay, so I did like a chat GPT workshop at the Dream Center, right? And I'm
You
like,
you
this is gonna
took you participated in one, or
no,
you
I hosted it. And
you
so I was
hosted
just
it?
going to do
Okay.
a Q and A, and I invited a bunch of people, I invited friends and, people I
Right.
know, right? But no one really showed up. Very few people showed up. And I really am a pretty critical thinker. I mean, critical in the sense of critical to myself, not critical in the other thing. But okay, well, what did I do wrong or what happened, et cetera? And my aha really is what caused me to go down this path of this tool where I need to collaborate. Okay, because I realized that a lot of people use AI. Like I mean, like I have a Tesla, so I have Grok on my dashboard for God's sakes. Anytime I
Right.
have a question, I just have conversations with Grok. Right?
Yeah.
That is not relationship building, and
Right.
and that's not how I make money, right? How I make money is building deeper and stronger relationships. And businesses, that's how they make money. So we got to we got to figure out how do we use AI to get but smarter about stuff, but how do we do it to build better relationships?
Hmm.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's a great question. I'm not spending a lot of time thinking about it, but I will. I
Okay.
think that'd be I think that's a really really great question, and one that's not necessarily looking for the answer. You're looking
No, right.
for it's an evolving.
Conversational.
It's the similar question of how do I improve, right?
Yeah.
So how do I keep improving? Well, and part of an elite team is they've never arrived. They're constantly improving.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that question I think is one of those questions like that is how are we using this to help us, be more relational with
Yeah.
our clients, with our team, with our peers, with our vendors, with everybody like that. So I think that's great.
Interesting. So to finish up, why don't you give me how do people get in contact with you, and then kind of what specifically, why would someone reach out to you, specifically? So why would they reach out to you, and then how would they get in contact with you?
Sure. Yeah. So contact, they can go to my website. It's jwaeliteteam.com, and or they could call me 407-489-6017. So I work with growing businesses to automate their processes and streamline their processes to save time, increase profits, and build elite teams. I shared, like what I see everywhere is, teams have the tools and the systems, but they're misused, underutilized, or disconnected. And so, because of that, what I typically start with, and this is an entry point for businesses, is I do a business systems health check. And I've got two versions of it depending on the scope. I've got a 1 hour version, which is focused on executives and individuals that operate with systems and data. It's designed to return 1 hour of their time back a month, which is up to over 12 hours a year.
Yeah,
And
that's huge.
it's really focused on helping individual productivity and kind of how the individual interacts with systems and data flow. And then I've got a 2 hour version, which is better for where there's multiple teams, departments, or complex data flows. It's designed to return 4 hours a month of their time, or up to 48, over 48 hours a year, and it's really helping look at systems throughout the organization, across the teams, and how the data flows through the organization. and finding where the friction is and resolving that.
And what kind of business would reach out to you? What like manufacturing, sales,
So,
insurance?
so I'm industry agnostic
Okay.
because it's really the administration of the business and the operations of the business. You know, manufacturing, construction, trades, sports related, professional services. I've worked in. I'm not worked in every industry because there's like thousands of them out there, but
Yeah, exactly.
I've worked in 100
Yeah.
of different ones, and the things that they face all the time is that's common to all of them, right? Is dealing with time, productivity, and getting everybody on the same page. And so that background that I bring of analytics and the team of Marine Corps of Take That Hill, right? I work on the systems, help design, implement, and reinforce the systems that help teams perform consistently at a high level without burning out as they grow. And so it may look like serving as a chief systems officer, either as a fractional or embedded or alongside another consultant, but that role is still the same. I'm, helping design, integrate, and reinforce the systems that help the teams perform at a high level without burning out as they grow.
And so those of you listening to this, I can't stress enough how important and this is a really good way to finish it, how important that is, because I think as businesses kind of realize how much AI is going to change their businesses, getting someone in like you to help them kind of navigate that and ask the right questions
No,
and kind of think through their systems and processes is critical.
it's critical, and they probably have all the tools and systems they need at their fingertips. They're already paying for the platforms. They just don't. It's just using them for what they need to do, and we use the AI to figure that out a lot of times
Right.
to help us. So
All right. Well, good deal. Well, thanks so much. If anyone has any questions, reach out to Jason. I appreciate everyone spending 45 minutes, an hour with us. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much, you guys, and have a great day.
thank you, Tim, very much.
Thanks a lot.